Welcome in, everybody, and welcome back. My name is Jeremy Toms, host of the Big Law Capitalist Podcast. Great to have you in. Great to have you back. Big episode. I couldn't be more appreciative of this next guest. He took some time out for us. Joe Kovacs, world-class athlete, world champion shot putter, to be exact. He jumped on the pod with me, and we covered a ton of valuable topics. His mindset is second to none. Obviously, being an elite athlete, he provided a ton of really helpful tips, just really sort of belief-driven sort of content that I think all of you can learn so much about. And then we dove into a lot of real estate stuff as well. Joe, when I say he's elite, my man is elite. So he's a 4-time All-American at Penn State, 2-time world champion, 2-time Olympic silver medalist, 2-time world silver medalist, and most recently almost broke the world record. Literally was 0.14 meters away from breaking the world record in the shot put, which is insane. He just won another major meet in Switzerland, of all places, Zurich, Switzerland. He is doing really big things. Took some time out for us. Without further ado, let's go. All right, and we're in there. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. I'm hyped for this episode. Joe, man, absolute pleasure having you on the podcast, man. Thank you so much for joining us. I have so much I want to cover with you, but first, I want to make sure that people actually, know you, which I think everybody probably does. Like you're a really big deal, man. But if you can quickly just tell us, Joe, where are you from, and we can kind of dive in from there.
Yeah, so I'm from Pennsylvania originally, the eastern side. So I'm from Nazareth. I went to Bethel Catholic High School, and now I live in just south of Nashville, Tennessee, just south of Nashville, down in Brentwood, Tennessee. So we've been bouncing around a lot. 2 years ago, I was in Ohio for the past 4 years, and before that, I was in California. So I've done a little bit of bouncing around, but I'm always a PA guy at heart.
Oh yeah, that's awesome, man. It's funny. So, before I jumped on with you in the intro, I tried to give you like a really solid, sort of like, hey, here's the history of Joe as far as like accomplishments. Dude, there are a ton of them. Like you've done so much at such a young age. When did you get started with shot putting? Your backstory is awesome. So I wanted to kind of like let the viewers in on that. When did you start?
Yeah, so I mean, the shot put me kind of came by accident. Like I was a football player to start. I always say American football because I'm used to doing some, podcasts in Europe and stuff like that. So, but I really joined track as a way to stay in shape for football. I was kind of using it as a free speed camp. I was going to run 100 meters, maybe do a long jump, and more or less just kind of stay in shape in the off season. And then I looked up to, like, as a freshman, I was looking up to the seniors and the juniors who I wanted to become. So one of the guys who I really looked up to, like he was like, my first like mini hero. Like that's the guy who I wanted to be in 4 years. And he walked out to the end of a parking lot, and I went to a real small Catholic school. We didn't have that many facilities or anything. And he had this crate with balls inside of them. And we just got done doing our warm up and doing the 100-meter stuff. And I was like, all right, I'm going to follow Jeff because, whatever he does, I'm going to do. And I saw him pick up these balls, and I had no idea what he was doing. And knowing what I know now, he had no idea what he was doing. But I just kind of copied him and just did what he was doing. And luckily, my mom was actually coming to pick me up from school that day. And my mom was a coach. She's a basketball coach. She was a field hockey coach. She was a track coach. So she had like some way better knowledge than either him or I had at the time. And we had no coach. So she kind of hopped out of the car and quickly taught us how to stop throwing it like a baseball, put the ball in your neck, and just give us these little kind of quick pointers. And that's kind of how it started. It was, almost by accident. Like I'm following somebody I really liked, and then my mom was able to help out. And then all of a sudden, like the head coach was just like, hey, like begging my mom if she'd help out more. And she kind of became our high school coach because of that, because she knew more than I think everybody else around her. But it was a big journey from there.
Your background generally, I mean, family seems to be like a huge component of your background, not only, just coming up, but also just your overall success, right? Like family's been a big sort of driver for you. As far as like the impact family has on you, right? And I'll give the viewers a little hint here. Joe actually it's expanding his family with his wife, Ashley. You guys have a couple twins due very, very soon. So early congratulations to you, man. But as far as family goes, like what kind of impact has family had on your career, on your success?
Yeah, I mean, for me, families, I was a really tight knit family. My father passed away when I was 17 and a half years old. So
Oh
like
wow.
that moment was just, my mom and I became closer. And to be honest, it was a 1-2 punch. The next day after my father passed away, my grandmother, my mom's mom, passed away. So,
Good
I
lord.
came home to 2 funerals. My mom had a funeral for her husband and her mother, which I look back more and like I used to think I was sad at that time. And now I realize like, wow, what did she go through at that time? Because yeah, I lost my father and my grandmother, but like she lost the 2 people in her life that she would have talked to and consoled. So I think because of that, my mom and I became very, really close. She kind of had to have these 2 roles of being my mom and also a little bit of a dad and also, kind of getting me around everywhere. So my whole family became closer because of that. Grandparents came closer because of that. Aunts and uncles had a lot of roles in my life growing up, and then that's continued all the way to this pinnacle moment in my life now, becoming a father in a couple months here, where it's like this is one of those things where it puts everything into perspective. And I'm lucky to have the wife I do, and not only she my wife, but she's my coach. We kind of experience every day together. But now we're bringing in these 2 children into the fold that we're going from 0 kids to 2 real quick, which I know is going to be a little crazy, but we can't wait for it. And it's an absolute blessing.
That's wild, man. And fun fact for the viewers, the way I met Joe years ago, I don't know if you remember this, man. I actually met you at a wedding, and it wasn't your
Yeah.
wedding.
It was
It was
Taylor's wedding, right?
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's funny how like the full circle moment sort of happens. But I remember when I met you, like the biggest guy ever, but at the same time, like, dude, just the nicest person, just genuine positive attitude. And I loved it. And I just felt like it was a really good situation, just like meeting you and just like understanding that like you are a rock star and like you're doing major things, but like you're a wholesome, really good dude. And you're a family guy. You can sort of tell that just from meeting you. So if you didn't know, like that vibe definitely comes across, man. So you know, shout out to you for that. I wanted to ask you because I'm curious because I have 3 kids now. The viewers are aware of that because it's been like all littered all over our podcast since we got started. But what are you looking forward to most, man, with your kids and then like impending Olympic games right in 2024 that you're also prepping for? Like what are you looking forward to most, and what are you most worried about like now that you're going to be in fatherhood?
Yeah, I think the things I'm looking forward to, my wife keeps yelling at me that I'm aging them too quickly, but I'm like, pulling them in the wagon, going places. She's like, it's going to be a while till they can sit up and you could do that. Like, it's going to be a while, but like, I think it's just like the journey, the everyday. I'm excited for like every day being different. That's the biggest thing I've heard from people who are parents like yourself already. It's just like, you have to you can't have these milestones that you're waiting for. You have to enjoy every single part of the changing every day, the learning, the literal baby steps to the running, to the walking, to having that influence to create, good people that, you can love and can teach people how to love the rest of their life. I can't wait for that moment. And I know it's going to be pretty awesome. And I feel like there's going to be all those little moments along the way that you just kind of take your breath away and put things in perspective.
And like it's wild. You're actually like you're a legitimate global traveler. Like you are everywhere. I mean, because track and field. You obviously know track and field, international sport, and so a lot of times we're near on the road. You're hopping on flights to go like across the sea. So that it's crazy too that Ashley is your coach. I mean
Mhm.
that it's like husband and wife. Like I mean tag team major duo, and now your kids are coming along for the ride. So I can't imagine like. First off, your kids are going to come out absolute champions. I mean, that's a guaranteed fact because your wife is a stud athlete as well. And so that's one thing. If you ever need an agent, I'll get my license just for you guys. But the other thing is like when you're competing and when you're on the road and when you're traveling, like your kids will more than likely be with you. So, I mean, they're going to grow up and see just the wildest stuff. What's going to be normal for them is going to be like, insane for the average person. So that's really cool that you all are able to do that.
Yeah, I think it's exciting for me because, I traveled to Europe when I was younger with some family members. I went back with my grandfather to go back to his hometown. He didn't go there for, I think it was over 40 years since he was back. And I remember being really, really young at the time and like just putting things in perspective of being overseas, different cultures, how things are done. And I think that's going to be exciting that we can, luckily my career gives us those opportunities. I know there's going to be a lot of headaches and hassle with travel and pulling it off, but once you get there, I think it's going to be helpful for our kids to just kind of see how things are done all around the world. And I think perspective is the biggest thing that I hope that we can give them.
100%, man. And like, you guys are going to be able to give them an insane perspective. One thing I actually wanted to chat with you about, which actually a good segue, is because your mindset, I wanted to have you on the pod for a number of reasons, but not often do we get to run into elite performers, right? Elite athletes, people who like are in the top 1.1%, of what they do. And so I think your mindset holds a ton of value. And I wanted to chat with you and kind of dive into your mindset a bit, because I think it's going to be helpful for people, even people who aren't athletes, just adapting to like the idea of like taking action and sort of following your dreams. We always preach, finding financial freedom. It's work, and it requires like strategy, and it requires like discipline. Who better to talk to about that than like, an elite athlete, somebody who has lived their life behind the idea of discipline, behind the idea of chasing dreams, right? So you have a quote that I actually saw on your website. The moment I read it, I was like, boom, we have to have the conversation. I think the quote is, make a career from losing, because that's where you learn to win. That's fantastic. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to kind of get an idea from you, like where that stems from, right? So like when you said that quote, what was it about your upbringing, your with your experience that made you say that, and what value do you sort of see from that?
Yeah, I mean, I think my journey to the point that I'm at now, I've got a bunch of medals, some of them gold, some of them silver. It's like you can look at the glitz and glam, the trophies you have, and you can just be like, that's successful. But I really wasn't, in my opinion, like a good athlete to start. And I think the lessons that I had to learn along the way to kind of adapt and find the way is really what kind of makes you resilient and kind of relentless over time. And I think I fell in love with the shot put because of the reality it has. There's a tape measure. So like every single day, your reality is crushed because you're judging yourself off the absolute best of yourself, or someone like me who's looking at the world record of all time in humanity. But like, there's always a metric there. There's always like, it's never, sometimes, I mean, trust me, sometimes I wish it was easier, but like when I look at other sports in particular, you could have two basketball teams that are kind of not very good, but they can have a good game against each other because their level's at the level. Every time I get into the ring, the reality of all-time greatness is being measured. So it's always like that perspective and that kind of that reverence I bring to it of like, I don't need to, everybody gets caught up with the winning. I think the true lessons you can have is like what most people would call losing. I think that's where you get out the winning. I saw like there was a quote I heard the other day about in school, they teach you lessons and then give you a test. And then in life, they give you a test to teach you a lesson. I think that's kind of what I've learned from my sport is I'm constantly putting myself to a test. Like I'm now 33 years old. What I did at 24 years old when I think I won my first world championship 25 or 26. Like what I would have, if you would have said that day, you're never throwing again, what I would be telling people about the perspective of what it is like to become a world champion, what it is to do that is completely different than what I would tell them today. And like, that's important to me because it's like, it's not always the same thing. You always have to change. You always have to adapt. And the lessons you learn to getting there, like trust me, the trophies, the medals, definitely the paychecks are exciting, especially the last one. That's what I care about probably more than anything. It's at this stage of the game with twins in the way. But I think the lessons of losing and being able to reflect on it are more important than just the high fives, the thumbs up, and the beer, cheers and the beer after meet that you won. I think that's so, in this day and age with the Insta everything, the Instagram, Insta this, you want that constant, that immediate gratification. And I feel like the best things I've ever learned in my life, you're chipping away. You're putting the money, you're putting the lessons in the bank to cash them out one day. And like, there's definitely points in my career when I thought about being done. And I probably tried to walk away in 2017, 2018, stayed in 19, and now 2022, I threw my lifetime best, one of the farthest throws ever in history, past the old world records that when I grew up were there. So it's those lessons that, like, if I didn't have all those losses to get to this point, I wouldn't have had the current win. And that's what kind of drives me to keep on going.
That is fantastic, man. Because, and it's so since it's a real estate show in a way, but it's also a mindset show. But to make it sort of compared to real estate, something that's analogous is the fact that it's not really about the end game in a way, right? Like, so when people are like, oh, I want that home run deal, I'm like, well, yeah, that's cool. But really, it matters more for, like, to make a baseball metaphor, it matters more for like base hits and doubles, because it's getting the incremental steps to getting you to the next level, right? Like when you start out, you're probably buying one house, right? Like when you started out, you were going, to one meet, one practice, one training session, and then you build on it every day. You figure out what you can do better. You just find little ways. And I mean, your point, I'm assuming, is it's full on nuance at this point. It's the littlest details that make the biggest differences.
Sure. Well, I think it's also, like you're saying, from real estate to the shot put to any sport, like every sport's really dumb if you think about it. Like running to the end zone with a ball and you're getting all this money and fame to do this, or kicking the soccer ball across the field. And the shot put, I'm literally just throwing the ball as far away from myself as possible. Right. It can be really, really, they're really dumb. It's really simple when you just look at it. But when you realize the details, and like in my sport, like 1 centimeter more of lag and separation can give me a meter more in distance. And you start getting excited about those boring things, just like you said, the base hits and real estate. Like, it can look very boring, maybe sometimes exciting, but like you're probably looking at the same, MLS sheets of different things, and you're analyzing it every day. And do you have more, guaranteed you've looked at way more properties, way more investments that you didn't want than the ones you did. But like, you had to look at them, you had to get through them. And that's how an athlete, myself, every day I practice, there is not one of those throws that I want to bring to a competition. But I know the culmination of all that work, I'm going to find those deals, in your case, or for me, those PR throws in my case, that are kind of a work. Because I think, like, I'm trying to get into real estate as well and get some things. I think there's a point where you start getting excited because you've kind of advanced a level. Like for me, when I started looking at some deals, and I had my whole Excel sheet. I made my own Excel sheet because I feel like I wanted to actually know the numbers, not just use somebody else's. But like, when you can actually look at a deal and you can, like, you know it's a deal. It has a good NOI. Everything checks off the list, and you get excited because you finally actually know, not just somebody else told you it's good. It then unlocks a level. And I know there's a level even past that and past that and past that. But that's what kind of gets you excited. For me, what gets me excited is those little steps. I'm at the highest level of my sport, and now I'm back in the weight room beating the heck out of myself because there's a whole nother level to unlock. And if those weren't there, then it's not exciting. It's not boring. It's not worth it. But those little moments, that's what keeps you coming back.
Dude, that's it, right? Like that, what you just said makes so much sense. I think it's a thing that people often, it's a misconception, is that they think, okay, so this person is elite at what they are doing, thus there's no other level above it. But the best figure out, like, oh, no, there's always a step more. There's always a way to get better. Like you said, man, like, I mean, I've looked at thousands of deals, no joke, thousands of deals. I don't think I'm anywhere close to where I'm going to be even in a year, because I know there's always more to learn, and it does become, sort of a game in a way. Real estate does. It's like I say, like, it's like playing Monopoly in real life, because after a while you stop looking at properties as like, oh, that's really cool property I can do. It's more like, okay, it's a volume game. Like, let's put in the reps, let's add it to the portfolio. Like, and so it becomes very methodical. And like you said, from the outsider looking in, it probably looks boring. But, when you put together, portfolios of properties, and you put together, massive amounts of passive income, that's when it's like, oh, like, that's really cool. But it's really about the process. That's the important part. And actually, that's a good segue, because I'm big on quotes. Like your quote was fantastic. Another quote that I love, that I've always sort of like fallen back on with my approach. And I'm wondering how you would feel about it, is a quote from the late, great Kobe Bryant. His actual quote was, the mindset isn't about seeking a result. It's more about the process of getting to that result. It's about the journey and the approach. It's a way of life. And I think what we've said is mirroring that, right? Like what we're saying is like, it's a day in, day out grind. And it's not the stuff that people see on TV. It's like the stuff that happens behind the scenes, day in and day out, that creates that, spectacular feat at the end of the day. But I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on it, because I think it matches up with exactly what you're saying.
Sure. Like the man who likes to walk will walk further than the man who likes the destination. It's like, you have to enjoy that process. And then I 100% agree with that. When you talk about Kobe, I actually got to see him play when he was in high school. So it's cool for me to like see those quotes, because I can imagine, I watched him dunk over some high school kids like it was nothing before he went to the league. But like to see a guy like that who started, another PA guy, but who started and brought that mindset to greatness, to championships. I think, he's a guy who, the word like relentless. Like if Jeff Bezos didn't own relentless.com, I would try to buy it. And I'm sure it would have been bought by a guy like Kobe Bryant or somebody before me.
Right.
Because like, that's really what what I see in my sport, and people who I get to meet along the way who are at the top of their games, they're kind of relentless. Like it's not enough. And it's not enough in the sense of like the superficial, like to me, like I don't really care about the world record, but I want the world record, right? It's just, it's a stepping stone along the way. And like, I've now thrown farther than the world record was when I was growing up. Now there's only one person who's ever thrown farther than me. And he did it 2 years ago. So like, it's not really that number. I don't really care about that number. I don't even really care about getting a piece of paper with my name on it. But that pursuit of greatness and that pursuit of, it is, once you start enjoying the discomfort because you know what it gives you, you start craving it. Myself as, I'm probably in the top one of the 1% percentile of strongest humans in the world. I'm always asked to do a strongman competition and all these different competitions, which maybe one day we will. I gotta wait to see if the twins get them out first. But I was gonna do one this October with Road Fitness, but that whole, everybody gets so caught up with strength, and that's so superficial of what your numbers are. Your squat, I can squat 1,000 pounds, I can bench 700 pounds. Well, that sounds cool, but like for me,
good Lord,
I love what gets me there, and that's adaptation. Like everything in the muscle, nothing is going to change in your body and probably your mind, and I believe this, unless you give it something to adapt to. So every time I go in the weight room, it's not me benching 500 pounds that makes me ready to do 600 pounds. It's me pushing myself to do something that's so uncomfortable that my body is freaking out that it needs to find a way to get stronger, because the next time it happens, we want to prepare for it. And like, I feel like that back and forth step, that journey can be used in my sport, other sports, and outside of the game as well, because it's that mindset of like, I need to be kind of learn to love the discomfort, learn to be okay with being, this past week or 2 weeks ago, I threw the farthest throw in the world of the year. It was a big deal.
Yep.
And the next week the next Monday, I was with my wife's collegiate women's team. And I was the worst one in the room because they were doing circuits, and I was getting my butt kicked because I wasn't ready for it. I'm heavier than they are, and I'm kind of not made for that. And like to be willing enough to put yourself in the situation that you were the best last week, and now you're having 8 girls make you look terrible. And the collegiate girls who are young, some of them are just out of high school. I think that's like, you have to be willing to be able to. My wife says you have to look like a pud to be a stud or something. One of those little quotes she has, but you have to be willing to get to that grind, to get to that adaptation, because you just expecting to be better is that's a false game. That's the same thing as finding, like, I'm sure you have everybody asking you, can I go on Zillow, find a place, and it's going to cash flow 20% on my everything, and it's going to be perfect, and I'm going to have perfect tenants, and I'm going to have to do no work and never see the property. Like, And that's one of those things I'm sure you probably wish upon somebody, because that reality, you need that lesson. If somebody just had the perfect property to start, they're not going to keep coming back for the next round, because they're going to get too scared by anything that's not good. You kind of have to force yourself to get through the stuff you don't want to.
100%, man. What's funny is, our company is at the point now where we're building out a team, right? So we're staffing, we're hiring people. And like, one of the things that I think is critical, and I really wouldn't want to hire somebody who didn't have this quality. I need you to have lost before, right? Like, I need you to have failed in order to know how you reacted thereafter. Because if you haven't, and then you come on and work with us and like, you're not meeting your own sort of requirements nor meeting ours, or vice versa. Like, I don't want to be there when you fail the first time. Like, I don't want somebody who's perfect. I need somebody who's like had to grind it out, figure it out, and then gotten better from it, learn from it. That's that's the winner to me. And I think that's like the definition of what you're saying, right? Like, it's funny, you said the 1,000-pound squat. I'm like, holy shit, that is bananas. You are like the personification of like the seemingly impossible, which it's nuts, man. But like, you've done that from that attitude, right? Like, I think about it less as like a mindset, more as like a belief, right? Beliefs are something that's like, it kind of guides your decisions, your characteristics, what you find that's important. Like, for me, my belief is like, I don't act with any sort of limitations on what I do. Like, I try to lead an unlimited lifestyle where I'm like, I can make things happen if I truly want them to. Like, in real estate, especially in real estate, there's not much that I feel like I can't accomplish at some point or another, but I'm big on delayed gratification, which is what you referenced earlier. Like, it's just knowing that like, if I put the work in, I can make it happen. Like, there was a world where like, you probably never thought like, I'm going to squat 1,000 pounds. Like, when you're in high school, you probably were like, I'll squat 1,000 pounds one day, but like, you worked with the understanding and the belief that like, as you keep putting into yourself and investing in yourself, it's going to turn around and reap, massive dividends. And so I commend you, not only your mindset, but like also like, you are literally like the personification of the impossible. That is bananas that you actually can do that. So thank you for sharing that. I wanted to, before we run out of time, I wanted to chat with you because the other reason I wanted to join the show is because you're a real estate investor. Like, that's something that's important to you. You've already kind of talked about it, but I wanted to get the why behind it. I think that everybody can benefit from hearing somebody else's why. What's the reason behind you, investing in real estate, focusing on passive income? You've grown an empire now, but what was sort of the genesis of why? Well, why was it important to sort of shore up the financial piece of it?
Yeah, I think my journey to kind of fall into that is important, because like, when I, in college, I had a business degree and I understood some things. And when I went to California and I didn't really have that much money to start, I played around the stock market, and that in those years, it was one of those, everything was good. You could put all the stocks on a dartboard, and you just throw it. If you hit one, it's still going to go up. Like, you might not hit the bullseye, but everything was good. So I thought I knew what I was doing. But I think everything changes perspective. I think like, I've always been interested in finance. I've always been interested in like financial security. And I know there's some of those hot words that, I kind of cringe when some people say like some of them, but I appreciate everybody's perspective. You can watch a Graham Stephan on YouTube to a Dave Ramsey, who might disagree on the way they get there, but I really appreciate their perspective. I actually did an interview with each other a couple weeks ago, and I think it was actually interesting to hear because, well, now I'm here in Franklin. I'm on Dave Ramsey's place is like maybe a mile and a half down the road. This is Big Ramsey Solution out of Franklin. So I see advertisements from him all the time, but he's interesting to me because like at first I want to say I fell into that category, but like I agreed with a lot of what he was saying, because there is a point where you just want to take a breath, right? I mean, people talk about like that financial like security of having money coming in, but I think there's a point where you just want to have that. Okay, I have some money. It's working for me.
Yep.
My debts are low, or I don't have any more. You can take a breath. I think it gets you out of that rat race mindset where you're just like constantly running against the paycheck or running against something. But then I think there is a little bit of evolution where, I saw you had a reel the other day where you're talking about debt and like a mindset of how you're talking about debt. And I think I agree with what Dave says a lot of times. If you don't know what you're getting into, but if you do know, and I think there's a process, like not everybody should just jump into something they don't know. But once you get 100%. To a point where you do know, you start saying, well, heck, if I can have somebody else pay this debt, that sounds pretty good to me too. So I think there's those baby steps along the way, not just Dave's baby steps, but the baby steps of, I'm ready to take this risk because I have this much security. I have this much in a savings account to, doomsday scenario. You start kind of building up those ideas and say like, okay, I'm going to buy a portfolio. I'm going to buy a duplex. I'm going to buy into new homes affinity fund, or you're ready to start taking those steps into that. I think that's the process I really enjoyed a lot, because like I think everybody gets caught up with how can I make $100,000 a year without doing anything. And I think I'm sure you've gotten to this point, like that number changes. And I think that's what happens to everybody. You hear somebody say, I first started this, but I told my wife I wanted to endow my salary like they do for scholarships universities. Like, okay, this is how much I've been making from the shot put. And heck, at this point, I probably have 10 more years left. I know that's pretty far to think about. But, wow. If I went to the 2032 Olympics and called it there, that's 3 more Olympics from now, which is pretty crazy to think. But
that's wild.
Yeah. Well, it's weird because, my sport's the opposite of like a gymnastics athlete. Like they're done at teenage years. And with me, as long as I can stay healthy and mobile, strength stays, or you can build strength. So it's kind of like you can get better with time as long as you're worried about the other little things along the way. And I just my biggest goal was the second I'm done, I can have passive income or some supplemental income that I don't have to do something I don't want to do. That was like step 1. Step 2 is like, I'm making enough money that I don't really need to do anything. And I'm not going to say not have a job, but like I can do what I really want to do. And then step 4 is like, choice. Wow. Right. Then you see it going down the line. We're like, well, where's that number? And then of course, if you say that to your wife, she's like, well, you should endow my salary too, right? So then you start, that number keeps changing. So that's what I'm getting to the point now where it's, I think, like you said, everything changes every time. It's not about that number anymore. It's about like, how much more can we bring in to give us that security, to keep taking the breaths, to have the perspective to worry about our family now and anything that comes up along the way.
Exactly, man. I could not have said it better myself. That's it. I mean, it's funny. So when you mentioned like the number changing, mine has changed. I'm sure just like yours substantially since all of this started. And honestly, I don't even shoot for a number necessarily anymore. It's more, and I said this in another episode of the pod, it's more of it's legacy wealth now that I'm chasing. Mm-hmm. And I think the way you get there is by having the belief that you can actually achieve that. And for a lot of people, that isn't, nor does that need to be the goal. But for me, just like you, getting to 1,000 pounds on squat started with, working with, 1 plate on each side of the bar, right? Like you sort of push your limits. And then at a certain point, you're like, oh, wait, I can actually do what was once unthinkable, or at least at one time scared the bejesus out of me. And so like, it does change, but I think, like you said, for different reasons. Not so much like, yeah, I want to make sure we're financially secure, and we are. But at the same time, now it's like, well, how far can we go? Like, how much can we really do, And there's really no cap on that.
I get, what excites me now is like we lived in Ohio 2 years ago, or I guess just over a year and a half ago. And I'll tell you, like, we were maybe more, I don't want to say we had more money then, but my ratios were better. I was excited, like, well, this is how much we owe on the house. This is how much we're bringing in. This is great. My wife had this great opportunity to come down to Vanderbilt, and now everything in Nashville is very expensive. So we kind of bought a house that was over double the price that we had in Ohio. And I would say kind of comparable. Not the house isn't really that much bigger. It checked the same boxes. But then all of a sudden, your ratio that you were all kind of like felt good about, you got to redo. But I feel really excited because, almost a year in, we're like, okay, this is what we're bringing in. This is what you get closer and closer. Then all of a sudden you realize, just like this day and age with everything, inflation going up, like, well, all those homes that I own, they just went up in value too. And all those places. And like, those are the things that, I'm sure you do this. We probably have Excel sheets too, but like, I feel like the best part about real estate is nobody calculates really in the principal pay down. Everybody looks at like your initial return investment. Everybody looks at how much is the house going to be worth, if I sell it in 10 years from now or 20 years from now. But like somebody else paying off your loan, that principal pay down is something that like, yeah, you can calculate it out. It's not that hard to do, but like nobody really does. And like, that's one of my most exciting things for me to think of, like, how many people can I have pay my bills for me? And like, and generate my net worth and value for my family. I feel like that's the exciting part about once you learn what you're doing. I know there's levels of this, and you're many levels ahead of it because you're obviously expanding the company and going for this, but like all those little steps along the way, I think change your perspective and get you more excited to add more to the future.
100%, man. Like if I had to break, real estate into a triangle to keep it really simple, I think people often think about the income and the tax, but the equity is crazy important. So a lot of people don't know this, but I actually buy each one of our kids. They have a property that we purchased, when they're born, simply because it's like the greatest college fund ever. Because what you're doing there is just you're buying a property.
So you're saying this because I talked to my brother-in-law about a 529 plan versus a property, and like, I mean, I don't really think it makes sense compared to a property. I feel like a property is actually a better value in the long term. Sometimes even if you buy a property that's maybe in like a zone section that you're having to pay taxes when you sell it too. I mean, there are some even more levels to that you can go after.
Absolutely. But like, you can get really crazy with it. I mean, you can honestly like...
Look, if you find an opportunity zone house, which I'm not saying you have to do that, but like you can go really crazy down the rabbit hole of like, well, if I have 20 mine might save me on some taxes if we do this. Well, you could also go down that rabbit hole with the real estate game and go to an opportunity zone house, and it can be fixed up, ready to go. And you might not be cash flowing that much on it, but that's going to be worth a lot more when they're ready to go to school and they're ready to go. So I know I'm going to buy 2 houses pretty soon here for 2 little ones coming all the way.
Because like the cool part is like when you're buying it, if you have a loan on it, say you do a 15-year mortgage on it, your tenants essentially pay off your mortgage. So by the time your kids are going to college, you have a free and clear property. What you can do is literally just do a refinance out of it. And that is tax-free cash, and you still have the property. Cash flow or not, like I don't even need them to cash flow. They do, but I wouldn't need that because all I really need to have happen is like my loan is paid down because
100%. I feel like I ran the numbers on my and I love playing in Excel because I just like playing the game of it. And like I honestly think like that's the best investment that nobody wants to really talk about because everybody's talking about putting a college fund away. And not to say that's a bad idea, but I think like you said, you buy a house and you refi out that money, and by then it's probably definitely cash flowing 15 years later because just the prices are going up. But yeah, even if it breaks even or pays a little bit more out, it doesn't matter. 15 years later, you'll be ready to pay your kids to go to a good school.
Exactly, man. I could talk to you for an hour and a half, like an entire day, honestly, man. Like I love your perspective and the fact that you are an elite athlete, literally like top in the world right now, man. I envy you, and I'm crazy impressed and super happy for you, you and your wife. Again, early congratulations on the impending delivery. I hope everything goes well. Obviously, me and my wife will send gifts and a card to congratulate you guys. But I really do appreciate you jumping on the pod, man. Before we go though, I want to make sure that people can find you and you can, sort of plug your socials. Is there anything you want to plug? Just tell the people you have going on right now.
Yeah, I'm pretty terrible at social, so I'm trying to get a little bit better at it. So, at Joe Kovacs USA is my Instagram handle, my Twitter handle, www.joekovacs.com website. looks a little prettier than it did a couple weeks ago. Trying to clean everything up here and get a little bit better. But more importantly, just kind of anybody who follows me knows they follow my wife as well. I think they'll probably be entertained by the food she cooks me and the amount of food I eat. So besides seeing some of the shot put go far and big weight room, I think you'll see a little bit more than just some weights. You'll see some plates as well.
Dude, I love it, man. I love it. And at some point I have to try to convince your wife to come on because she's an absolute like monster in the game. Like not only incredibly smart and successful, but just like her drive and motivation, I'm sure it matches yours, right? Like you guys are just, you model excellence. So that's why people follow you, is because they want to see, how do I become great as well? So give her my best. Me and my wife give our best to you and to Ashley. Early congratulations again, man. Thanks so much for joining. To the audience, thank you all so much for joining. As always, very, very much appreciated. Make sure you hit me up on Instagram at Big Law Capitalist. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, Jeremy Toms. Until next time, everybody, I want to say peace. All right, we did it. Thank you so much for joining me for this week's episode. I really, really do appreciate it. Do me a big favor. If you want to be a part of the Big Law Capitalist community, to stay up to date with all of our latest episodes, you gotta hit that subscribe button. Super important. But I can't thank you enough for joining me this week. I'll see you next time. Peace.